Talk Business Arkansas is brought to you by the Arkansas Farm Bureau, the Arkansas State Chamber of Commerce and Associated Industries of Arkansas, the Electric Cooperatives of Arkansas, Noble Strategies, the Arkansas Healthcare Association, and Delta Trust and Bank.
Joining me now is Dan Harpool, the Complete Computing CEO and the author of a new book, The Little Book of Planning Wisdom. What possessed you to write a book about these wisdom quotes here?
Well, you know, I was originally a little reticent about using the word planning, that it would put people off, but there's so many other books about leadership and general motivation, and very few about planning. And even though it's the first step and the first of the 4 functions of management, I've been doing strategic planning seminars and presentations since college. And over those years, I've had so many people come and ask me, where'd you get that quote? I didn't know it was from that person. Hey, can you send that to me? So I just decided to put them all in a book. And everybody needs motivation, and particularly sometimes motivation to manage time and to plan. So that's how it came about.
You talked about 4 steps of good management there, planning being the first of them. What are the other 3?
We've got organizing, directing, which is now more popular to say leading, and then controlling. We'll have to come up with a better word than controlling. Maybe we'll say auditing or something. But you know, the book, even though it has a chapter on business, as you know, it's got chapters on from sports, arts, literature,
military.
I've got over
religion.
200 sources. And it starts out with planning wisdom from the Bible. And I've had a number of people send me emails and say, you know, I've never heard of that quote. And of course, Proverbs is not on the only book it comes from, but so I started with the kind of the foundation of all wisdom, and then went into philosophers. A lot of those that I had heard through time, but never really knew who said them.
And I talk to a lot of business leaders all the time, Dan, and it's really, everything begins with planning, and you got to have more than just a plan A. You got to have more than just a plan B. You got to have a contingency for a lot of different things that can influence. What do you find is maybe one of the bigger challenges when you're working with folks on strategic planning, as you've been putting this book together and you've thought more about how planning operates? Is it the most critical of the 4 phases of management that you see? I
think so, because you can't organize and you can't direct, you can't lead any of the other phases without having a plan. Now, planning it doesn't have to be the 3-inch manual that you put on the shelf and that people look at once a year. It should be a process. And now it's very popular, you've probably been reading about this, to have plans that are very much vibrant and dynamic. And Lee Iacocca has a quote in there about any plan that takes over a page of paper is too big a plan. And I found over time that just putting that down on paper, you know, go back to even Napoleon Hill and some of the early motivation literature in business, he said the same thing. You know, it's the process of having to sit down and think it through that matters. Plus, to allocate resources to react to the world we're in today, planning has to be a process. As you say, you have to have options. Tony Dungy's quoted in the book and talking about if plan A doesn't work and B doesn't work, you've got a lot of other letters in the alphabet.
And you can double those letters of the alphabet up, I have found too, with the efforts that I've had to make over the years. Let's take a quick commercial break, and we'll come back and talk a little bit more about the book here, and I want to hear a little bit more about your story of how you kind of got into some of the endeavors that you got into. I'm with Dan Harpool. He's the CEO of Complete Computing and the author of the book, The Little Book of Planning Wisdom. I'm Roby Brock. We're right back after this break.
Well, I don't think it's going to be an easy conversation because they are very strong-willed. I think it's going to be important to us that we know that you're somewhere in a facility that looks after you, has compassion, has care, and you respect it. I mean, I'd love to look after them. I'd love to be able to take care of them, but I don't think I could. That'd be a wrong choice on my part.
Arkansas's skilled nursing and assisted living centers provide quality care for our seniors.
Farm Bureau helps protect its members in more ways than you might think. They've always been the voice of agriculture in Arkansas, working on behalf of folks like me when nobody else would. And Farm Bureau stands for the values that Arkansas families care about. They've protected my right to farm and make a living, which helps everybody who likes food on the table. You know what they say, Arkansas counts on agriculture, and agriculture counts on Farm Bureau.
The Arkansas State Chamber of Commerce and Associated Industries of Arkansas. The State Chamber AIA is the leading voice for business at the state capitol and serves as the primary business advocate on all issues affecting Arkansas employers. Our mission is to promote a pro-business, free enterprise agenda and prevent anti-business legislation, regulations, and rules. Now more than ever, business matters. Learn more at arkansasstatechamber.com.
I was looking for a bank that could best protect my finances.
It shared my passion for my business's potential.
A bank that offered investment expertise,
lending support, insurance guidance.
A bank that delivered full financial support.
That's how I found True Balance.
True Balance.
From my bank.
From my bank.
Delta Trust and Bank, the expertise to meet all your financial needs.
One of the real advantages of electric cooperatives membership is having a voice in our state's energy future.
Not a week goes by without important energy issues making headlines. These are issues that need to be discussed. And you should know that as policies are being developed, the cooperatives are looking out for our members, advocating what's best for you.
We are your friends and neighbors.
We are your local electric company.
The electric cooperatives.
We are Arkansas.
East Harding Construction. East Harding has provided client-focused construction services for commercial construction projects in Arkansas since 1974. Want your next project delivered safely, on budget, and on schedule by an Arkansas-based company you can trust? Visit www.eastharding.com or call Van Tilbury, President and CEO, at 501-661-1646. East Harding, client-focused construction.
And we're back with Dan Harpool. He's the CEO of Complete Computing, author of the Little Book of Planning Wisdom, which can be found where?
It's on Amazon.com and on Kindle.
All right.
And that's the two best places right now to acquire it. And it's available. And you know, I thought because of the nature of the book and that people would refer back to it and use it as a reference, and I've had a lot. Kindle, people are putting it on Kindle because it's searchable. It's so easy to search.
It's a good resource book. It's an easy read. It's basically a collection of quotes that you have organized by different disciplines. We talked earlier, philosophy, religion, military, sports, business leaders. Kind of what drove you to come up with those organizational categories? Did it all just kind of fall into place, or was it a little bit of a jigsaw puzzle?
I knew it'd be a little daunting if they were all together, and I have a lot of books on quotes that are like that, and it's hard to find, and it's hard to zero in, and people might have thought I'd make business first, but I really didn't. I started, you know, with the Bible. And
why'd you start with the Bible first?
Well, I think it's, you know, the source of all wisdom. And a lot of quotes that people use every day, they don't really realize necessarily they came from the Bible, or they were amended or adopted from the Bible. So I started there and then went to philosophers, some that you'll recognize, and I've got some sources in there that people probably don't recognize.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, I discovered the importance of planning, you know, as a young child. You're planning either play dates, school, how to get your homework done, how to get your chores done. I started the business at 10 years old.
Yeah, tell me about that. What was your first, you mentioned that in your biography here, what was your first entrepreneurial endeavor?
It was actually a landscaping business, but beyond mowing, we installed sprinklers and we planted hedges and did things, you know, a traditional landscape company would do. And I learned very quickly that being where we needed to be, having the supplies we needed to have, and working that into other schedules was crucial. And that's really where it started.
You're not much older than me, but did they not have child labor laws back then? Age 10's pretty young.
They did. You know,
I was peddling lemonade back then in those days when you were doing landscaping.
Well, when I was 14, I was managing 2 mini pearl chicken stores for a dentist in my hometown.
Oh, really?
And going to school. So I've been in the business world a long time. But you know, later on when I got got the opportunity to consult for the Small Business Administration in college, and saw so many instances of people with great plans, great ideas, but they just didn't have an organizational structure. They'd never sat down and done any planning. And then later, when I got into the corporate world, I found out that, you know, they had the same problems in many cases. Of course, you know, as computers have come along and software's come along, you can buy these various products and use them, but they're not as effective as just getting the people together.
Well, you talk about planning too, and you mentioned earlier how vibrant and dynamic business planning can be now and is encouraged to be now. And I've read, it seems like I read an article recently, maybe in Fast Company, that was talking about sometimes it's better just to just go out and start doing it. Now, I think there's still a structure in place in terms of your business plan, but you can get very bogged down in the details of planning, and you can overanalyze and overplan stuff, can't you?
You can. That's one reason why this book is not a how-to with 150 forms, and it is all about, you know, it's just some great ideas from different places and time, and the motivation, more importantly. And if you're trying to convince your business partner, people who work with you, or someone else that it's important, you got a lot of resources there to help you. Harvard Business Review just did an article about the new planning, you know, and it's kind of called planning on the fly. But they still point out in the end, you've got to have that planning process. When I do my seminars on strategic planning, I tell people, you know, without a vision and without a mission, we're not going any further. We're not going to try to set action plans in place or goals until we've got that vision and mission in place. And I've seen that transform a lot of different organizations, nonprofits, small business, and big business.
Is it unfair for me to ask you a favorite quote? Is that like asking you to pick which of your children you like the best or something like that?
You know, there's a lot of them in there, but Harold Janine wrote a book called Managing, and he was credited with being one of the engineers of the modern conglomerate, and he's not a name people know like Jack Welch probably, but he says the drudgery of the numbers will set you free to make good decisions. And that's another thing I notice in planning. People will use a lot of, you know, ideas and thought processes and wisdom they think that they've heard in the past, but they really don't get the facts. And it doesn't have to be just numbers. But let's really know what we are working with, you know, try to quantify it, and then we can move forward. And so that's one of my favorites in there.
You have a quote from the great philosopher Yoda from Star Wars in here too.
I do. I had to do that as a notation to my good friends, but you know, that's misquoted a lot, as you've probably heard. But there is no try, just do. Another favorite one on the back is from the A-Team. A lot of people know Colonel Smith from the A-Team, and he says, I love it when a plan comes together. And you know, that is something too. You can get the result and then claim you had a plan, and clearly people do that. But if you go out and read the books on Google, Starbucks, Zappos, you find that maybe they didn't have the traditional planning model that we were taught in business school, but they did have a plan, and it started with a vision and a mission, and they went from there. So that's why I like Colonel Smith's quote.
Dan Harpool, CEO of Complete Computing, author of the book, The Little Book of Planning Wisdom. You can get it on Amazon or on Kindle. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Rob.
All right. I'm Roby Brock. You can keep up the latest business and political headlines from around the state at talkbusinessarkansas.com. We'll see you next time.
Talk Business Arkansas is brought to you by the Arkansas Farm Bureau, the Arkansas State Chamber of Commerce and Associated Industries of Arkansas, the Electric Cooperatives of Arkansas, Noble Strategies, the Arkansas Healthcare Association, and Delta Trust and Bank.